Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here. Oh.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the Spoilercast for Dragon. I'm going to admit this is something that, like, right off the bat, not to spoil my opinions, but this is something that I thought was going to go. I've been worried about it, and it paid off, and I'm very happy. Sandman. Yeah. All right, Dragon. So this series is, man, I forget exactly what my opinion of the trailers and everything was, but for a long time with this show, I've just kind of like had it in my mind that this is basically like an impossible thing to adapt, that it just can't be done, that the comic, the graphic novels, or whatever you have, is it a limited run comic? Is it a series of graphic novels? I don't know, but Dragon, suffice to say, I read through, I want to say about the first, like, as far as like the collected omnibus volumes go, I want to say I read through the first like couple of them. Or I'm sorry, the omnibuses. Oh God, hold on.
Okay, while you're searching for your thoughts, why's the crawl gone?
Just what are the things called where it's like the preloads and nocturnes, the doll's house.
Yeah, they're called volumes, Tiki.
Volumes
of the book.
Thank
One could say arcs, but let's just say volumes.
Okay, so what I was trying to say is that I've read through about the first 10 or so volumes of Sandman. I definitely haven't read through all of it, but this series kind of makes me intrigued to go back and kind of catch up on it. But yeah, Dragon, I was very nervous about this. I definitely remember I was not only nervous about this in the sense of like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be a good adaptation. I was also worried about it in the sense of it's been a long time since I touched these books, a long time, and I remember loving them. I remember, I vividly remember reading through them and everything. But I was also a little edgelord high schooler when I last read these. And it is a very infamously kind of edgy comic, and Morbius, or Morpheus, not Morbius, Jesus. Morpheus,
very different thing.
I know. Just the way he comes across, just kind of like his general like legacy in pop culture, it's very much like emo kid vibes, right? So I was wondering if the source material would hold up and if the adaptation would be good. Dragon, I'm pleased to say this show is not perfect, but it's pretty damn close as far as I'm concerned. I think this is about as good of an adaptation as you could get in a lot of ways. I honestly think I'm with you that the only things that are imperfect about this are like weird rights issue stuff that they kind of had to work around, which is really not the fault of the writers. So, yeah, I thought they turned what was a very convoluted and complex and sprawling narrative into a pretty digestible 10-episode first season that even had some season 2 bait in it. So, yeah, I'm quite pleased with this, Dragon. I'm quite pleased with this. I thought overall it was quite a home run for me. I think I really had an enjoyable time watching through this. I thought all the stories held up, and I thought the actual adaptation process behind it. It's actually one of the more interesting adaptations that I've seen in a while, which we'll get into. Anyways, Dragon, what say you?
Yeah, so the Sandman comic, huge. It's on like the shelf of the important, graphic novels, particularly of the 80s, of the ones that really defined the industry. So I think this was kind of a Watchmen level of like the comic book, the unfilmable comic adaptation, being adapted sort of event. I always respected the Sandman. However, what I always, here's the thing. Personally, I always had trouble getting into the books, so I've never fully read the books. I've read probably, again, mainly I've read the first volume, and I basically I'm familiar with the two stories that we have seen here before us here, which essentially comprise the first season. But particularly for me, I can never get behind. I know it might be sacrilege to some folks. Sam Keith's artwork, it's not my taste. It really isn't.
Gasp! I just did
yeah.
a group gasp.
Sure. But yeah, that's the thing. the art style was always a little too kind of like hyper style. It was kind of bordering on the the Arkham Asylum, Serious House and a Serious Earth sort of style, which it's kind of madness for the sake of it's kind of a in the case of the Sandman, it's like an ethereal sort of thing, kind of an ethereal sort of vibe, and it's supposed to be kind of dreamlike. But I feel when we're trying to depict humanity, it kind of muddies the waters, let's say.
Ooh.
But regardless, though, that's just my own personal taste. The storytelling and Neil Gaiman writing, of course, fantastic. But for me, I felt the best adaptation I had had up to this point of Sandman, out of the very few that we have, as OAW Entertainment says in the comments, the audible audio drama, which is fantastic, and that basically adapts this first season plus like a little kind of bonus chapter, let's say. And it's I love that adaptation of the story because it kind of fits into the whole dream mindscape in the very literal sense, and that's theater of the mind. It's in your head, and it's very kind of has an A plus cast. It's like it's fantastic. So to me, that was always like that was the one to beat in regards to telling the Sandman story in kind of the best way you could. So yeah, so I particularly love that. Again, they had an all-star cast, and I've always been hearing this I was hyped. This is finally getting made, and the main reason I was really hyped for Sandman, I was always looking forward to this eventually being made on Netflix, especially when they announced like, hey, we're going to do it on Netflix, was because of Lucifer, the TV show. I love the Lucifer TV show, and the Lucifer that is in that show is pulled from the Sandman comic. And they kind of went their own way with it, kind of fit him into a crime procedural. But again, with the fact like, hey, we're taking a Neil Gaiman character essentially and giving him a crime procedural. What fun can we have with that? And it was a lot of fun. So I always awaited like, man, this is great. If one day they can actually make that Sandman show, and once it went to Netflix, then eventually said, hey, we're doing a Sandman show on Netflix. Oh my God, they're going to put him in that show. So I then had a mixed bag of when they announced like, hey, guess who's not going to be in this Sandman show? The Tom Ellis Lucifer. No! Why? Oh, why? So yeah, but it's funny. This is not like the first Neil Gaiman adaptation that has been done, like Good Omens, which I've seen, which was great. So I think this ultimately turned out great, like that, despite this
I
one
think
having.
this is a little bit more accessible than Good Omens, to tell you the truth.
I mean, it's weird though, because Good Omens is a little bit more kind of contained. It's less kind of like voluminous.
It
It's less.
is, but I feel like Good Omens, like, because remember when we talked about it, like Good Omens to me kind of represents. I mean, it's very stylized, and I obviously love the lead performances in that show. But writing wise, it represents kind of why I kind of fell off the train with Gaiman after a while. Basically after my emo, edgelord high schooler years. Which is that Gaiman does like a lot of like allegory for allegory's sake, and a lot of just like, I don't know, it's very artsy fartsy, for lack of a better word. But the thing with this show is that this show can be described as artsy fartsy, but I think it blends like the serialized bingeable quality of a good 10 episode Netflix series with kind of like some episodic Twilight Zone type stuff, and it blends those two things really well.
So I mean, yeah, looking at this, it's I feel the season did have a few limitations, but I think still it delivered kind of an excellent adaptation of those first two books, which I was familiar with, and yeah, it definitely leaves me wanting more. Yeah, that's the thing. It makes me it's like the right now it's the only thing that Netflix will have along with Umbrella Academy to compete with all the other kind of comic book adaptations and stuff that we have on the regular. I mean, it's kind of funny that's kind of where we're at now with Netflix. But what's the big kind of arrow in the quiver? It's the Sandman, which that's a pretty prolific arrow you're going to have in your arsenal.
No,
Got to be
they
honest.
could be worse.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like Netflix yet again. The ember is being lit. How long it'll stay lit, no one knows.
All right, do you have any background? You want to just get into the episode?
Yeah, well, let me give you a little bit of background here because the
Okay.
Sandman is kind of a big event. So as I said, this came out in '89. This is in good company on the shelf with Dark Knight Returns, Swamp Thing, Watchmen, and of course Sandman. This thing was revolutionary when it came out. So much so, like very shortly after '89, like early '90s, it was like it was the pipe dream. Sorry, it was the pipe dream to adapt like Watchmen was. Like it's unfilmable, never be made, we'll never be able to get off the ground. And my God, almost more than Watchmen, almost. Like Watchmen was something like we put on a shelf after, okay, attempt, shelf,
I
attempt,
mean,
shelf.
Watchmen at least has like more or less a 3-act structure to it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, Watchmen is like one story compared to like
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
like litany of volumes. So there's a lot of trial and error with the Sandman over the years. Essentially, it kept getting shelved and unshelved in the hopes that like there were a lot of over the years there were many stabs at like Terry Gilliam was always was like Neil Gaiman's go-to guy for this. Like I'd love it if Terry Gilliam took a stab at it.
Oh God, if only, right?
And at points, every way they slice it, and ultimately, even with this, like the only way to really tell the story that would make sense is to adapt the first two volumes as your first story, or at least as your main story for what you're going to say on the Sandman. So that was always the plan, which is still what we kind of got in the end there. David S. Goyer, of course, made a huge name for himself with stuff like the Dark Knight, and then he kind of beat into the ground with other stuff that he did. But the point being, David S. Goyer, by the time the Dark Knight came out, he had some juice flowing in the industry. And there was a lot of talk of like a Joseph Gordon-Levitt cast produced, and like he was going to be involved, possibly directed as well as starred in as Dream, which honestly would have been really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So point being, again, there's a lot of overall. All you need to know is like over the years, usually what happens is like, hey, let's do a Sandman show. Let's get some people together, and then there were creative disagreements with Warner Brothers because again, this is not your traditional superhero fare. And all of this was before the advent of streaming and Daredevil coming on Netflix and really like changing the game and giving us like a wider playground to play with. So we kind of went to the small screen for a few years, and what happened was Neil Gaiman's books kept getting adapted after a while. Like you had Good Omens, and you had American Gods, and by that time I was like, okay, you know what? We got this Lucifer, to do the Lucifer show, and it's kind of like, okay, well, obviously we like Neil Gaiman, so let's try and get him on board, and let's actually try and get this show going. David Escore's on his last legs of popularity. He says, you know what? Let's give it a shot again. What do you say? So they all went to Neil Gaiman's house, and they basically sat down, they kind of boiled it down. Like, okay, we got the green light for Sandman. How the heck do we do it? Why is basically Neil Gaiman asked the writer question. Well, why do we need to tell this story in live action? What do we have to say about this story? And basically just kind of boiled down Sandman to kind of its bare essence, which essentially I think is why the season kind of turned out as well as it did. And yeah, so that's essentially each episode roughly adapts an issue of the 16 issues of the comics. Some of them were two-parters, and some of them were kind of like retrofit into the other issues. So essentially, it's 16 issues in 10 episodes.
There's two cases that I can think of off the top of my head where they combine the episodes, and the two cases I can think of are the Hell episode, where I believe the stuff going on with John D and the woman in the car is from another issue.
Yeah,
and then there's also of course, the episode 6, which is the big famous iconic death issue, and then the other one, the bet, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, but I really do think those episodes, honestly, I have my issues with the Hell one, but I really like the John D stuff in that. But episode 6 we'll get into. I think that was one of the best episodes. Anyways,
and stuff like the convention was like a two-parter. So there you go.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So you're ready to go?
Yeah, folks, we're basically going to go over the highlight reel and kind of the talking points of each of the 10 episodes. So starting with numero uno.
All right. Hold on. Sorry. Chapter 1, Sleep of the Just.
This is a great pilot.
Oh, it really is. And right off the bat, I just feel like they just absolutely nailed the tone. They nailed the atmosphere. I love how much like the comic book, it throws you into this scenario without any sort of context. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, like, there's a rich kind of almost Illuminati style guy who his son died in the war. He thinks he can kind of play God. The whole idea is like kind of like the money can buy you everything, including cheating death itself. And it just goes from there. It goes from basically kind of like Dragon, the arrogance of man, not the arrogance of youth, but the arrogance of man.
In this case, the arrogance of old money.
Right. And kind of spins off from there. And I love how it just kind of sets the tone right away. It very much just hits the ground running. It's but at the same time, I do feel like the series like I feel like the pace of the show, Dragon, really impresses me just in this episode and just overall, because I feel like we get a lot of stuff just kind of thrown at us, right? But it's all very digestible. Like I was actually worried that I'd have a hard time following this, even if I read the books, just because, like I said, it literally feels like it's been like about probably 10 years, but probably a bit more than that, more like 15. But it feels like a lifetime ago, Dragon. That was almost half my life ago that I read the books at this point. But it really just gets you up to speed quite well, and it kind of like there's no hand holding involved. It just it's just kind of like, yeah, this is the scenarios. We're just gonna kind of like unroll them. I feel like it's almost kind of like the way I would describe it is it's a good drip feed of world building in this first episode. Does that make sense?
It does. Essentially, what we do here is we kind of set things up at the very top, and we kind of get the story balls rolling, and then we have our big inciting incident, which again basically sets up the next preceding episodes, and then the majority of the episode after that point is our main character doesn't speak at all, and he's just kind of like in this
Which I
little
love that, and I love that that's an introduction to him, to Tom Sturridge as a performer, because of course with Morpheus, one of the big things in the comic is his dialogue that is literally so larger than life that it's emphasized in like this starry night sky font. But yeah, the whole first episode we kind of have this dude just just kind of contemplating, and I think it's a really great kind of first impression of what this guy is able to bring to the table in the role.
Yeah, so I think the big thing to talk about, and again, I think the strength of the show, and I think the reason things turned out as well as they did, I mean, aside from the point you brought up in that every episode is very self-contained in that they had the really great strategy of, okay, let's take the thing that Netflix usually struggles with, and like, hey, we have multiple episodes to fill.
Yep.
Let's essentially, if we can, let's take an issue of the comic that we are pulling from, make each episode an issue of the comic. Novel idea. So essentially, again, looking at the arc of the Sandman, which I think is the big crux of the season, as most shows have, we have this arc of a guy who's all about his whole. We have a guy who's very secure in what his purpose is. We're in a world of like kind of gods and godlike characters, and we can play with time in a really interesting way, like we do here at the top. He's basically in there for 105 years, I think, or like 100 or so years, and it's the fact that this guy, he's all about the waking world and basically monitoring the waking world again, like the actual Sandman mythos. Is the idea of like a guy brings you dreams and stuff. The idea is there's a guy who's going to be kind of controlling dreams and nightmares and everything, so the waking world doesn't go crazy. And so by that logic, this guy is protecting the interest of humanity and mortals, but he doesn't quite care for them. It's his job. It's basically, again, he has an interest in them, but he doesn't have like a true compassion for them.
Right.
It's kind of like, again, Neil Gaiman's big signature with a lot of stuff, and Lucifer gets into this as well, and other stuff as well. It's the fact that it's kind of humanity of the cosmos. It's sort of like how kind of like higher beings relate on a human level, on a character level, in a very human way. So he's like a distant dad to humanity to an extent, He's kind of like there's a love there, but he's always working. So
exactly.
So again, our inciting incident is quite fascinating. And the Burgess family essentially captures him for 105 years, and there are nightmares in our world, and chaos is reigning. And essentially, the way I like to read, I could be wrong here, but the way I like to read is that we have the birth of the serial killer because of the Corinthian. I like to think he was the original serial killer.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I don't know if that exactly tracks, but at the very least, he's the reason it came in vogue. Like, he's probably the reason we have the term serial killer more so. Like, he kind of popularized it. So the Corinthian, of course, played by the wonderful Boyd Holbrook, who I think we'll talk about a little bit more later. But the big thing to note, though, interesting in our storytelling, is that the Corinthian does not have a huge role in the comics. And what we did here is that we kind of wove him essentially through the whole of the season. And we kind of kept him in play until he really had a crescendo at the convention.
Yeah, he's like probably the biggest change from the comics, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, he was more of like kind of a bit encounter sort of thing. Like, okay, we have the Corinthian, maybe we set him up, and then maybe we do something with him. And so it's the fact that we kind of made him. This is a guy who's orchestrated, so Dream is powerless. And again, what I was getting at with the whole arc thing is that what's so great about this approach is that, hey, we've taken a character who finds himself beyond mortals and we put him in a very mortal position. We end this episode with everything stripped away from him, both in the literal sense, because he's rocking the pale skin in that in that little glass tube. But no, it's like his three big totems. The helm, the ruby, and the bag of sand, all gone. He's at his weakest that he's ever been ever, and that's a really interesting place to put that character. So he's going to go on kind of a humbling odyssey, one could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought it was really effective how they showcased the death of his original Raven, and then that leading into Matthew in the next episode. So that was a good little stepping stone.
R.I.P. Jessamy.
Indeed.
All right, I think that. Yep.
And then let's see. We don't really get introduced to Lucian until the end of this episode, right?
I know Lucian's at the end of the episode. I forget if Lucian may have been at the top or not. Probably not. I think Lucian was just like, we had Dream basically say like, and everything, and then this happened. So I think it was,
Gotcha. Okay.
So bonus, Lucian shows up basically kind of like the librarian, kind of keeper of the dreaming, which essentially is the the dream world that he kind of his kingdom, and it's in shambles because he is one with the dreaming. If he's gone, kingdom's not going to go well, and everyone's left because the place is in shambles. Who wants to live in a place like that?
Mm.
And that's where the first episode ends. That brings us to 2.
All right, Chapter 2, Imperfect Host. So this probably feels like the most Neil Gaiman-esque episode for me. In a good way, though. In a good way, because like it throws a lot of concepts like, hey, Cain and Abel. Why not? You know what I mean? But it does it like really in a really fun way. God, this is going to sound silly, but do you know what the Cain and Abel stuff reminded me of?
Well, I have a weird obscure pool, but I don't think that's what you're going for.
No, this isn't weird and obscure. Well, it might be weird, but it's not obscure.
What do you got?
Peridot and Lapis.
Oh, well,
just hanging out at the barn. They're prickly towards each other, but they also love each other.
I mean, I don't know about. I mean, you're basically equating the little gargoyle to the pumpkin. I take it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit of a stretch, but okay.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, so yeah, this episode is very much kind of our transitional episode. This is where Dream he's taking steps to find the 3 items. And the way he does that is he goes to the Fates, but to go to the Fates, he needs kind of a little magic boost. He needs something to regain a little bit of power to summon them. And what does he do?
Oh God, Dragon! I binged this whole thing, so just you don't throw me obscure questions like that. What does he do? I'm sorry.
So again, he visits.
I'm sorry.
He visits Cain and Abel.
Right.
And he basically he kind of kills the dog. Essentially, he kills their pet. He kills Gregory the gargoyle. Reabsorbs Gregory the gargoyle. Basically as a sacrifice to save the dreaming, and but in the end, though, it gives him a little baby a gargoyle named Goldie, which is cute.
And the guy gets killed just over the naming of him.
So I tell me if you got this, because I'm assuming like the running gags that Cain is constantly killing Abel.
That's what I assume, yeah.
But Abel's fine because he's in like the dreaming. And he's like he'll just.
Well, I mean, he had that conversation with the gargoyle where it's like, yeah, Cain, he's a big brother. He needs to get his aggression out, but he loves me. It's all part of the song and dance, if you will.
I'll tell you the thing I kept thinking of, and this is not really a reflection on the show at all. It's fine. I'm sure it's a lot closer to the book. It's just the fact that Lucifer had like a whole Cain and Abel thing for a season, so I kept thinking of, oh, that's not Tom Welling at all.
Oh God!
No, folks, I am talking about Tom Welling because Tom Welling played Cain in Lucifer. That's
great. That's great.
It was actually pretty good. I mean, it wasn't as like off the page as this was, mind you, but it was quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so point being, we have an audience with the Fates, and the Fates rather creepy, and I love the whole thing. Like they kind of answering riddles, which is some risk involved there. And the fact that this scene always creeped me out in the book. Like he always keeps pushing with the extra questions. They keep getting scary at him.
Oh yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah. So let's see. Also, we kind of hit the beat here of like Lucian was like, no, look, don't go to the Fates, man. Nothing good ever happens when you go to the Fates. Like, why don't you ask?
Haven't you seen Hades Town?
Right.
The Fates are about the closest thing to a villain that show has, actually. Anyways.
So again, this all feeds into the whole she asked, "Hey, why don't you ask your family?" Again, so far you'll notice we only teed up only some of the family, and we kept throwing their names around all the time in this season. But only like 4 of them. It's dream, despair, desire, and death.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 4 Ds.
Well, yeah, it's always been the 4 Ds. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget. I don't think they're all D. I think only those 4 are D, right?
No, I'm pretty sure all of them are Ds.
Okay.
Are they not?
Well, I can't remember. All I know is at least most of them are D's. I don't know if all of them are D's. I know there's more family. I just know we focused on 4 here.
So we have dream, despair, desire, and death, right?
Yeah, those are the 4 that we established.
Okay, I know destiny is one of them as well.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, maybe they are all D's, I guess. All right.
Come on, D.
Where's Turk Barrett when you Anywho, the point being, Lucy would say, like, hey, why don't you ask the family for help? And again, the idea of that dream here, again, it's the whole dysfunctional family of the cosmos theme that, again, Neil Gaiman loves to do, where it's like, hey, I'm, there's a pridefulness in Dream, and that's like, no, it's my responsibility to look over my realm, and we're not supposed to interfere in each other's affairs, which again is kind of like, it's the mistake. Had he investigated this, he might have found out who was responsible for all this at the end, but he didn't do that.
I mean, to go back to your dad analogy, like in layman's terms, it's honestly like kind of like, like an overworked dad story in some regards.
Yeah,
the overworked dad story who needs to get a little bit of his family life back.
Yep, dude. Yeah, man. That's it. Neil Gaiman's all about that. Neil Gaiman's all about the daddy issues when it comes down to it. I mean, you really look at Good Omens, you look at Lucifer. There's a lot of daddy issues fed in there. All right. So, by the way, you speaking of Sandman, you know about this, right? Dream is actually modeled after Neil Gaiman to a degree, right?
Yes, I knew that. Yeah.
Cool. I just want to make sure that I was really like that fact, just the idea, like, yeah, Neil Gaiman does sound like you could pass.
Dragon, why has Spielberg never directed a Neil Gaiman work?
Well, again, because we have so much time at getting him off the ground, Tiki. That's why.
I'm just saying, Spielberg is like the king of daddy issues.
Fair point. And Spielberg does make a long movie, so when you think about it, yeah, there is no reason why Spielberg
I'm just saying, man, something they should hook up at some point.
Well,
not get your mind out of the gutter. Come on.
I'm just saying that was a poor choice of words on that one.
Oh, come on. Piss off. Anyways.
All right. So, so let's see. So let's point being, we know where the items are, at the very least a starting place to where the items are, which basically will map out the next 3 episodes. So, episode 3.
All right, chapter 3. Dream a little dream of me.
It really bothers me that we did not work the song into this episode, but it's a minor gripe. I'm just saying, it may have been too obvious. That's why they didn't do it. But I mean, come on, it's right in the title, and we keep using it everywhere.
I mean, I know the title is like literally the issue of the chapter issue of the graphic novel.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
but it seems like a missed opportunity for sure. Like, I feel like the title is a little on the nose, if anything.
Yep. So, so again, oddly does not use the songs. This episode, here's the thing. This episode, I'm at war because I don't know if I can't really judge this episode objectively. I don't think
that's probably my least favorite one. Maybe not even for the same reasons as you, but the Joanna Constantine thing, like it's one of those things where if they couldn't use Constantine, I don't know. I'm not even like, of course I'm not great. Like, oh, it's a woman. Ooh. But it just feels a little like this is like the one time where like I can feel the restrictions at play. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's my point, Tiki. It's not about the gender thing, really. It's specifically about the fact that we've traded John Constantine, who, when you look at the guy, man, that guy's interesting, to a character just like, okay, it's a lady in a white coat. That's it.
Right. Exactly.
It's just very hollow. She's an English lady in a white coat versus, man, that guy has a story. I want to know more about that guy. That's the thing. That's again, Constantine was just the epitome of like, he's the Hellblazer, man. He's cool, and he's essentially Doctor Strange.
Like, you could do a gender swapped version of him,
but
I just don't feel like they built the character up properly.
That's the thing. She just felt like, again, the fact that she just kind of comes in, but she doesn't steal the show, which is the whole point of John Constantine. You want him to kind of steal
Right,
the
exactly.
yeah,
Like,
otherwise,
correct
what's
me
the
if I'm
point?
wrong, but Constantine was like, he was basically like the first big crossover event, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So the Sandman, what happened was in the comics, they eventually phased out all the DC references, but in the first two volumes, they had all the DC references, and the biggest one was like, okay, we literally had a DC character, John Constantine, in the story. And then you had like references to Arkham Asylum, and then you had like maybe a couple references to some others, but
Of
those were the
course, all
two
the Doctor
biggies.
Destiny stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Those were the biggest references that
Yeah.
are very key to the story that we did have to circumvent, that are very noticeable. More so just the John Constantine thing. The other stuff, like, okay, well, it's an asylum, and it's all that.
The other
But
stuff really doesn't matter. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, ultimately, that's the thing. So that's the big takeaway of this episode. The thing that really does work, John D.
Like you said, it would be nice to see the CW Lucifer, if anything else.
I don't know. Yeah, to be honest though, again, because the guy basically is like that character brought to life. You have the John Constantine from the CW as well. He also was very well. He would fit in as Constantine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, Taron Egerton played him in the audio drama. By the way, that wouldn't have been a bad way to go either.
Nice.
So the point being is that's the thing. Just again, not quite the scene stealer and is making a descendant, but regardless, her story just doesn't really grab me. And the fact that, if I recall, and I could be wrong here, the thing with John Constantine is like he basically did something. He's guilty over the fact that he ended up being this poor little girl sent to hell, and he felt really bad about it. Essentially, how that story goes, I forget. That's eventually where it went. I forget if it was that in the original Sandman comic or not. And we changed that here. I can't recall. Regardless, what is working though, that we do get introduced in this episode, John D.
Yes, John D. Indeed. David Thewlis, just total redemption from Wonder Woman. I love him here.
Yeah, of course. Thewlis always a great actor for sure. Here's the thing I love about John D is the fact that he is ridiculously kind of charming, despite the fact that deep down he has very disturbed ideologies. And I just love the fact that this guy, he hates, because of what his mother lied to him all his life. He hates lies, and by proxy of that, he hates dreams, which are the ultimate lie. Which is why his whole methodology is a harshly honest reality that, without any lies, without any hopes, without any dreams, any falsehoods at all, or like deceptions or delusions of yourself, reality will tear itself apart. That's a really fascinating Neil Gaiman idea, Doug.
Totally.
I think we represented well here.
Back in the day, I really wanted Michael Emerson in this role.
Oh, yeah, he'd be perfect for it. No question.
Right.
So that's the thing. I love how I forget if we did this in the book or not. I like how we kind of link the stories here, where he's a descendant of Burgess, because the lady who cheated on in the Burgess family basically gave birth to John D, at least the descendant, or however that worked. Yeah. So also we get introduced to Matthew the Raven. So let's talk about
Matthew.
Hello, Matthew.
Oh God.
There's a deep pull for you, kids.
We're taking it to the Daredevil deep cuts.
Well, you brought Hello D.
I know.
Anyway, yes.
Nothing wrong with resurrecting a running joke. Anyways, so Dragon, as you know, or you might have picked up on, I'm on a bit of a Patton Oswalt binge right now.
You gotta watch Happy next, man.
Wait, is he involved with Happy?
Yes, he's the imaginary friend. He's the side.
Oh, I do have to watch that then. I did not know he was the imaginary friend in that show. Oh,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, that show just instantly shot up my radar now.
Bare minimum, you have to watch. The first season adapts the book. The second season is them going off on their own, which gets a little crazy. But I mean, that's anyway. Point being, it's great. So yes, Patton Oswalt, he has this thing for playing animated sidekick characters, and they end up.
He does, but he does it so well though.
Yeah, here he plays a lot more earnestly. Here he plays it. Not that the other character is cynical, it's just the fact that it's kind of played for comedy that he's so earnest. In this case, like this, it's the fact that we have kind of this straight man Raven that's just kind of calling out Dream on stuff.
This dude who's like, he is very, very, very new to this. He was a human not too long ago, but he's just kind of rolling with it.
Yeah. It's like F it, let's go to hell. At the
right.
It's like, yeah.
All right. On that note, Chapter 4, A Hope in Hell.
Yes. Okay.
We get
Here's
to
the.
see Gwendolyn Christie's face for once.
Well, you saw her face in Game of Thrones, so yeah, it's not that
I
much
know,
of a
but you
mystery.
and I are both not Game of Thrones people, and people should know that about us by now.
That
But
is true.
anyways.
Yes. All right. So obviously, this is the big Lucifer crossover that almost was.
Right. Okay,
Alas, it
Dragon, I'm
wasn't.
just gonna be straight up with you.
Yeah.
I remember this was the first point when I was reading the comics where I was like, okay, like I'm loving this vibe overall, but not every like they're throwing a lot of ideas out here, and not every single idea is gonna hit. And Dragon, this fucking like epic rap battle, rock paper scissors bullshit. I just cannot get down with it, dude. I really can't. Like, not in the book, not here. It's so hokey to me, you know.
Really, you didn't like the? I don't know. I like that. There's. Think about this. Lucifer does not. Sorry.
Dragon, all it is a rap battle. It's like I don't know.
Well, what I'm getting at is
It's just I can't watch it and not think it's silly.
my point is I Sandman does not have like fighty fight action like we are used to, and I like that the show kind of takes a different approach to it, where like we have a lot of philosophical discussion, and we also have kind of a way of illustrating in a visually memorable way that is kind of in tune with the comics. So it's less the fact that it's like a rap battle; it's more the fact of like, look at the trippy visuals we're getting from this rap battle.
The trippy visuals are great, but I still just can't. The rap battle in itself, it's just silly. I don't know. I don't know.
Would you rather have seen? Because look, if we're being honest, the guy weighs like a buck soaking wet. She would have wiped the floor with him if it was a fisticuffs, man.
No, I would have not rather had it be. I don't know. I don't know. There's ways to do stuff like this. I just think the whole like maybe if the rules were a little bit more established, like
I mean,
the whole
it
just
was
like,
pretty
I'm
clear.
this
Yeah,
thing,
it's
I'm
one
this
upsmanship.
powerful thing, and I'm this even more powerful thing.
Yeah, it's one upsmanship. But again, it's almost like it's. I'm trying to think what you call this sort of game, but it's like one of those not a strategy. I guess a strategy game. Like one of the things where you're trying to top the other guy, like whoever goes first, sort of thing. It's like a war game of sorts. I don't
Dragon,
know.
I'm just gonna kind of have to plead. Like I don't know. I just don't.
I'm
get
not
it.
saying it's the best thing in the show. I'm just saying I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a problem.
It was pretty wonky for me execution wise, but that's okay. Subjectivity and whatnot.
Okay, regardless.
But I do really love all the John D stuff in this episode.
Yeah, this is where we have John D and Rosemary's Road Trip with Susie
One
the
of the
dog.
most memorable issues of the comic for me, just because, like you were saying, I feel like this particular section, like, illustrates better than anything else about John D. Like how, like he is utterly terrifying in his methodology, and yet, god damn it, you can't help but be charmed by the guy, even as he's doing horrifying things.
Yeah, he's warning that guy, don't pull the gun. It's not going to go well for you. What is he doing? Because he's got that protection amulet on.
It's Remus Lupin, my favorite character in the Harry Potter universe. Oh god!
I mean, I like that you're legitimately scarily, almost like in a Hannibal Lecter sort of way. You are charmed by this guy, even though when he's just kind of waxing poetic about the human condition, but then he mentions like stuff like for murder and
right.
arson, murder, and it's like that's 911 territory, and she tries to kind of slip it to the guy. I love that every time someone tries to call for help to the proper channels, it just goes horribly.
We'll get there. There's one storyline, Dragon, that hits really close to home.
Yeah, I know it's terrifying what happens there, but. So anyway, so I gotta admit though, I do love the ceremony and the rules of hell just in general. Like when we see with our depiction of hell, like when we go down there, we have like the fact that it's cold and you bring your own fire.
Right.
And we also have like the
that's almost kind of like a Hades Town-esque idea.
Yeah, we have like Squatter Bloat, who has like this. I'm sure I'm absolutely sure it's pulled from the book. Just this whole like one at the door, room for one more. Which is great. Now I think they teed up something where you have Nada. Nada's like this I forget if she's like an African woman or something. I have this lady from the age old days who sees who sees Dream as like this as a black man, and I think it's a metaphor in the context of our story to it's something that's from the comic where basically this woman he had a relationship with a woman like back in the day, or at least an encounter with her, and I think it's a metaphor for Dream's relationship to man, in that there was a love there, but there's a love for it, but again, but she is not forgiven because he basically says in what she's seeing, like I do love you, but you are not forgiven. So that's kind of like I think his relationship with humanity ever since he was captured for 100 years of like,
Right, yeah.
I still love humanity, I'm still doing my job here, but I have not forgiven humanity for what they did to me. So I think that's the point of why we
it's
have
like
that.
it's almost Christ-like in the most biblical sense of the term.
And of course, we picked the right episode to talk about the biblical stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, also again, the biggest obviously this episode is the one where because we also got Mazikeen too, who's from the book, has like the scarred up face, and Mazikeen is in the show Lucifer as well, which really irritates. Like, come on,
Oh God,
there, right there. I know the hell is depicted very differently, but if only we could have told him, hey, one day you're gonna cross over into the Sandman officially. Just leave a little room. Leave a little room. Anyway, so let's see. So let's see. Oh yeah. Anyway, the point being, so we have really after the battle, Lucifer has like some really great lines. Or I like how ultimately we have with the episode title, "A Hope in Hell." That is his salvation. That's how he wins the day. Like hope, which obviously is the one thing that the devil cannot trump. Because without hope, she has no power, and without dreams, her realm has no power. So I love how hollow her threat is, and how Dream just kind of slams her down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And we give so we give the protection amulet away. Now, this to me, I wonder if you felt this was convenient at all. So we get the helm back. We re-enter and we have the ruby. It's a little convenient timing when they show up, and John D is just he's gotten the ruby, and Dream is knocked out, and the ruby gets stolen.
I mean, to a certain extent, it's a little convenient, sure, but I also feel like the show up to this point is doing a really good job of kind of like streamlining this kind of like fetch quest to retrieve his artifacts that might have taken a whole season in lesser hands. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. I don't mind that it's like in 3 episodes. I'm just saying literally the idea that, hey, I got my helm back. I'm going to teleport literally to where the gym is. And the second I do, John D's there and with that protection thing and ba-boom,
Yeah.
It's basically, I'm pretty sure it's from the book. I think just the idea. Okay, that leads us to the 24-hour diner, essentially the 24/7 episode, which we're about to get to. So, I mean, again, in regards to pacing, I can easily overlook it. It's just something that kind of occurs to me. Man, it was really good timing for all that to happen.
All right. So, Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, Dragon, I think it's pretty easy to like. This is like the MVP run of the series, right?
Honestly, for me, it might. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say. 24. This one's impressive. 9 is also really good, but 6 is easily the best for me.
9 is good. Like 9 almost kind of feels like it's got some boys energy to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you have like it's honestly for me, it's 6, 9, and then probably 5, or I don't know where 5 ranks. Point in 5 is good too. But let's talk.
5 honestly might be my favorite one. Maybe it's the horror movie fan in me. But I don't know. There's just something so psychologically rich. Also, this is like by far the most memorable issue of the comic for me.
Yeah, this was always
adapted perfectly.
This was always lauded as like the scariest part of the Sandman comic.
And so yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about this. I think it's just like it's pretty spot on from what was on the page. I think every character is very, very well realized for being just just kind of like a standalone character who only appears in the single episode. I think the ultimate confrontation with John D is very satisfying. We get that one little note at the end that we don't necessarily get in the book with Dream's final conversation with him. Yeah, I don't know, man. This just really plays for me. I thought this was pretty damn stellar. I really don't have anything to nitpick here.
You know, it'd be really impressive if someone did a one-act play on,
Oh, I could see that. I could totally see that.
with this, like a community theater or something. Someone just did like a one-act horror play about the 24-hour diner.
I could absolutely see that. I want to do that now. I want to write that anyways.
Regardless, but yeah, I mean, the big thing to highlight here is the fact that again, the whole episode, and again, we're adapting it so well. As the whole episode just takes place in this one stationary location, and obviously we're just kind of building up the terror and the horror and the idea of the truth escalation to dark realities thing. And just the fact John D walks in so welcoming and charming and everything. He's kind of charming the waitress, and he says like, well, did you really think I was handsome?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Why don't you tell me what you really think? And of course, it just kind of spirals from there, and all they're like, "Oh, look at our cutesy little plot things," and then it's just, "Oh God, they've turned so horrific." Like there's adultery, there's sin, and there's like stabbing a guy, and then like just John D. They're eating ice cream at the end of the counter. Then Dream enters, and we really just, oh God, I love how we build up the whole. We just built things up so well, and then he enters the dream room. We think Dream is on his heels, and then we literally see John D in the palm of Dream's hands, which is a great visual. First off, that looks fantastic,
and that is a very striking visual in the book as well. And I don't know, Dry. I'm just gonna call you out. Like, I'm sorry. I love the. I mean, you obviously know you're in the minority here, but I love the visuals of the book. I'm sorry,
I'm not saying. I'm just saying consistently in terms of the story. Before we get to the mind-bending visuals, it's a little hard to get into. It's like you have the money shot, the money shots,
subjectivity and everything, but
the money shots are good. I'm saying getting to the money shots takes me out of it.
Right.
Regardless, yeah, but I mean the big. I mean, for me, I love the writing and the philosophy here. So I love just that brilliant Gaiman writing about, what dreams do and why dreams are necessary, why the lie is a necessity to the human condition, the fact that it's inspiration, it's hope, it's inspiration. It basically, the dreams prevent kind of this all the creepiness and the pain and the greed, as it were. That was all really, really nice, and he's reabsorbed the power and everything. And I love that Dream as a character is quite fascinating because he knows that John D is mortal and that this was kind of thrown upon him. He didn't necessarily take this. The gem kind of corrupted him to a degree. So he doesn't like punish him or kill him, but he puts him in an endless sleep, which again, even in like some Justice League adaptations, like we saw the Justice League animated show, we put him in a coma or we kind of put him to endless sleep. So essentially that's what we did with John D. So that's a very fitting fate for Dr. Destiny.
Okay, we get a little look at Desire as well. I kind of like that Desire is just sort of in the background, like, they're very much going to be, I assume, a focal point of season 2 when we get there.
Yeah, well, I don't know how big a role Desire is going to. I assume Desire is going to come back for sure, but you have to imagine Desire would have a bigger role in season 2. But
I'm just saying they definitely played around with teasing it.
The big thing for me with Desire, I don't know if you had this. There's 2 actors in this show that resemble other actors, and it kind of drives me nuts.
Oh God!
Now Desire, sorry, I'm thinking of. I think Despair. T. You sure you're talking about Desire, or are we thinking of Despair?
I'm thinking of Desire.
Desire's the one with like the white hair, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's the thing. It's the darndest thing, T. I could have sworn it was. I know. It looks like that character should be Desire, but I don't know. No, I'm sorry, T. You're absolutely right. It is Desire. I'm sorry. It makes all the sense in the world. I don't know why I doubt it. The point being, Desire reminds me of Alan Cumming, like a young Alan Cumming.
Oh, totally. I absolutely get that vibe.
Like when I saw it, I was like, man,
to the point where I almost wondered if it was intentional.
Yeah, it has to be, man. I mean, that does not act. That actor looks exactly like it's like a young Alan Cumming.
Yeah,
like, you found a way to de-age him without actually de-aging him.
It's almost kind of like like Alan Cumming was probably like the dream casting back. Much like I feel like Alan Rickman back in the day was probably like the dream casting for Dream.
Right.
But
yeah, I think the other one to me is Hal. Hal reminds me of Sean Hayes.
I could see that.
All right, let's get to episode 6.
Okay, chapter 6. The Sound for Wings. So, first of all, do you want to address the race swap thing? Because I don't even really think it matters, but people are. I I don't know. I honestly I think the type of fans that bitch about this kind of stuff are just frankly not the fans that I want watching this channel. Honestly, but I think it all comes down to performance, and I think her performance was wonderful. Like, just absolutely captured the essence of the character, like leapt off the page. So I have no issue with it.
Well, I mean, here's the. I think the performance was good, and I think probably the best thing I've seen Kirby Hal Baptiste do is just the manner of like ordinarily I don't care for that actress too much, but I think here she did a great job, and I think she represented that role well. I will say this though, the only doubt I had about her casting as Death was the fact of again the audio drama kept getting in my head because the casting that was so amazing. Each of the cast members roughly could have played those actors in live action. So is the fact that Kat Dennings was cast as Death in that, and that's excellent casting
Ooh,
from the
yeah.
book to that.
I don't know about. You know what? I will give her the benefit of the doubt and say like I would have to like actually listen to her performance.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Dragon Cat Dennings just kind of has like almost like a little bit of a Valley Girl thing going on that I just can't see with that
Well,
character.
I'm just saying her vocal performance is excellent for Death in that audio
I don't
thing.
doubt it. I don't doubt it.
So I'm just saying I had that in my head just going into the show, so that was not really like necessarily like a race thing. It was just sort of like it's kind of hard to. She's gonna have a lot her work cut out for. But again, we went a different route with it. I think a different route we went really worked though. So that's like
Uh-huh.
we take kind of two of the most memorable aspects of the Sandman comic and we kind of fuse them into one story, which was really good, and I think makes for episode 6 being a standout ultimately. Where we have so think about this. So we're past the halfway point, right?
Yes.
So Dreamy's fully formed. He's back at full power, one could say. And yeah, he's now kind of like contemplating. Well, I've been captured. He's kind of in the Winter Soldier kind of vibe of his life right now. Like, what do I do now? You know, what's my purpose? You know, I've kind of I've regained everything. I'm back. You know, it's he's kind of taking it back to zero. And Death has kind of given some things to think on, including kind of almost like a wager they had way back in the olden days.
Hmm.
But about the Death stuff specifically, though, how do you feel about how it was represented?
I like borderline frame by frame perfect.
Yeah, I mean, how wonderfully memorable was it shot? Just the idea that people like they're just going to casually go about their day like it's still happening, like things are still going on. Then they have just again, it's the fact that we kind of usually Death walks in, but the fact that we had them walk in the Death, that's like kind of a fun switch I think they had from the book. Where it's like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
it's like, oh hey, how's it going? Just yeah, I'm sorry, man, you're done. Like, but my wife's right there. I gotta tell her. Like that's the thing
Oh
that broke
God,
my
that
heart.
was brutal. That was fucking brutal.
Like,
Jesus
no,
Christ.
I gotta give my wife the code so she can get into things. Like, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, that to me was like the. And here's the thing about the episode, Dragon, is that like I feel like generally speaking, for an episode that's centered around death, it's pretty lighthearted, as is the issue of the book. Like generally speaking, it's very optimistic about humanity and about the like just being a friendly face to be there for people and stuff like that. But then I feel like that little moment right in the middle, like that does speak to like like yeah, death, like it can be beautiful, but obviously it does suck and it's not fair. And then, of
Yep.
course, the baby as well. And I'm glad they didn't dwell on the baby because I'm not sure how much I could have taken of that.
I love how kind of shocking it was there, where you think maybe going for the mother, reaches in, grabs that baby.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Like, I'm
Yep.
glad we didn't actually see all of the mother's reaction. We just kind of like heard like like she says the name once and that's it. Like that's all we need to know. We don't need to like be there for the traumatic realization. You know what I mean? I
But you
feel
know
like.
what?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I love that nowadays we're really kind of like the argument could be made with the boys, for example, that sometimes we might be on the edge of like we're just kind of glorifying the violence to a degree. I'm not saying we're doing that with the boys, but I'm saying the argument can be made that we're nowadays it's like
Yeah,
it's
we're kind
shocking.
of doing that with the boys. There's an art to the violence of the boys.
I don't know. There's an art to it. I'm just saying in
Uh-huh.
general, like some people might simplify it. They're glorifying violence, where it's the fact of like, hey, we're showing a lot of shocking imagery and shocking things and implications and everything. But I like that Neil Gaiman. It's more so the like, hey, it's more about the emotional kind of shock than it is sort of like the like kind of like the gory shock. It's like we're not
That's what
doing
I'm saying. I feel like if we would have seen the mother like full on having a breakdown about the baby, like that would have gone too much into like, like being almost traumatic. But we just kind of get to sit with the idea and then move on. You know what I
like
mean?
you're sitting with kind of the sadness, like, oh, the gargoyle got killed, and like, hey, the baby's been taken away, and like a guy
Right,
can't see his
right.
wife one last time. Like these are like the emotional losses I think are hit very well.
Exactly.
All right, so point being, thinking elephants. What'd you think about the feed the birds reference?
About the what? I'm sorry.
Feed the birds.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in the book.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure.
Huh. Okay. Well, regardless, I love just feeding the pigeons. Regardless, yeah. So
You
I
know
love
what you'll get when you do that, mate? Fat pigeons.
delightful. Regardless, so I love that Death feels guilty over like the fact that the whole reason he was captured and the whole reason everything's not going well for him is because they were after her to revive the son and everything.
Uh-huh.
So again, there's a nice bond between like the Death and Dream. So
Yeah, Death and Dream has always been like sibling goals for me, honestly.
yeah, for sure. So best element of this story, as great as the Death stuff is it's always the standout of the Sandman. There's like I can't tell how many like statues of Death they sell and everything. Death was
I'm
very
sure
much
it's a
in
big
vogue.
cosplay thing too.
Yeah, Death was very big.
Uh-huh.
Let's put that on a poster. Death was big.
Oh god.
So yeah, so let's the bet. Essentially, they had a wager back in the day. I don't know if a wager is the right word, but essentially, kind of an experiment. Like, yeah, you should really connect to humanity. See what you're doing this for. So maybe like I'm gonna you pick this guy who's basically going on a bar, but I never want to die.
Uh-huh.
Gadling here, and Gadling, he's being boisterous, and basically until Dream wills it, until basically Dream decides the guy says he doesn't want to live anymore. He controls his fate, so he won't die. Essentially, the guy will have eternal life. And he meets this guy, chats him up, says, "I'll give you eternal life, and we're going to meet here every 100 years on this day."
Yeah, and this leads to I kind of agree with you. I think episode 5 is my overall favorite episode, but this is like probably my favorite like individual section of the whole show. I mean, it's fucking wonderful.
It's centuries of pleasantries.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I feel like it captures the essence of the strengths of Neil Gaiman's writing more so than anything else I've ever seen in live action for me. Just kind of like the cosmic kind of contemplative quality to it, the philosophical nature of it, the humor in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I love the evolution of the dynamic. We kind of start at a distance of like you're just there to observe the guy. To there's a bit of intrigue of like, why does this guy not want to die yet? It's been hundreds of years. He's to again a little bit.
I love the idea that that's so far back in the history of humanity that people like just kind of like embrace death.
Yeah, and I love that it kind of goes to kind of there's a bit of a camaraderie forming, like they're kind of saving each other's bacon when somebody, when people are starting to take notice and they have to move to a new pub, and we have like we set up we set up something for the second season in this episode. We set up the fact that hey, Dream was talking to Shakespeare. That's going to lead to the thing in the next volume.
Oh God, I can't wait for Midsummer Night's Dream Dragon. I am hyped. Yeah. I am hyped.
Because with that Shakespeare thing, they're going to absolutely do it. They have to, and that's the next story.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the very next, but I know it's like in that next volume essentially. So they'd have to, be one of the episodes.
It's coming right up for sure.
Which, by the way, in the
I
audio,
wouldn't be surprised if they made Midsummer Night's Dream the centerpiece of this season, much like this episode is the centerpiece of this season. I'm sorry, the centerpiece of next season.
It would probably be a good call. What's funny is in the audiobook, essentially you adapt the season that we had before us, and then at the very end, it ends on the Midsummer Night thing.
I was gonna ask. I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Now, mind you, now I haven't gotten to it yet, but they did upload. Well, not they put out the second volume of the audio stuff, which probably comprises like another 2 books or so, however long. So I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't know how good it is, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so the fact that we kind of go from that to kind of like, again, the camaraderie is formed to then he basically makes the assertion that at one point that we saw this guy, he's lost it all, like he lost family, wealth, everything, and yet he still had so much to live for, which is Dream. And
I love that idea.
yeah, and I love that Dream. We had this bit where Dream's very anti-slavery, and he gives him like kind of a pointed bit of advice of like,
Basically a wagging finger.
yep, you know. So he just basically says like, and again, I like that Dream being a character that he is. The fact that like, no, taking away free will is not cool, man.
Yeah, right.
He's not crazy about it because he's been,
He's not going to take away his free will to do that, but he's just saying like, but you're taking away free will from other people.
I will take your advice under advisement or something along those lines, which is great. And I love they get kind of labeled the devil and the wandering Jew with like kind of the sketching from hundreds of years back. Like this doesn't look anything like me. Anyways, my point is you have all these fun interactions leading up to this point, but then it's the idea that Dream.
I love how as the episode goes on, you kind of get excited, like, oh, we're getting closer and closer to present day.
I know, right? Yeah, and we get
the transitions in this episode are just freaking like chef's kiss, right?
They are indeed. And I
love the '80s one in particular.
Of course, the irony of the '80s one being Sandman comes out in '89, so it's kind of funny.
So that would have been present day, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So the idea that Dream made a friend, but he's too darn stubborn to admit a fondness or like a fondness or a closeness or a care to a mortal, or like any sort of dependency on a mortal. He just kind of like shuts it down. He gets all cross with him. And I like the idea that, again, kind of the biblical implications here being the human spirit charmed Dream, because think about it. In the end, that is what it's what his whole deal's about. It's about the human spirit being embodied in a dream. It's about all that. So it makes sense that character would be charmed by the human spirit, but he's just too stubborn to admit it. So, like, the next 100 years, you're gonna meet me here because you want to. And then he disappears, and all the poetic irony, like, oh, no, he would have been there, maybe. I like to think he would be. But it is the most charming thing in the world, the way they reunite, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You're late. Leaving his apology to keep a friend waiting, like, oh.
It's like such a simple act, just like him being able to call someone else a friend, and it's just the biggest like emotional payoff ever.
I mean, it elates the heart so much. It's so freaking.
And I feel like it's probably that actor's best work in the series. I think is that moment right there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that moves us on to. I think the rest of these are going to go by relatively quick.
I agree.
Yeah, because they kind of bleed together a little bit.
And I think that's kind of maybe, for one aspect, that might be to its detriment. So let's get to it.
All right, so the Doll's House. So just with the Rose Walker stuff right off the bat, I need to address, of course, the stuff with the foster parents, Dragon. That is like fucking brutally.
Well, let's hold off on that till
what?
We should hold off on that till the next one.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just saying that's when we really literally have the foster parents in the next one. So
no, you're right. All right.
I'm sorry. I just want to kind of space. Regardless, so Rose Walker. So we tee up the sad story of the Walker family here, where essentially they lost their parents, and her brother Jed will be lost into the cold, heartless vacuum that is the foster care system.
Oh yeah.
After their parents die, like amidst like transporting during a divorce, I think is what happened. So let's see. So the Rose. So apparently, Desire kind of orchestrated some stuff with Rose Walker here, I think. And yeah, it's so the problem with Rose Walker. I think Rose Walker is kind of a detriment to the series. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't work. I'm not saying she tanks the season, but I think she is somewhat of where everything else is exceptional. I think Rose Walker is kind of like the bending straw. I think it's sort of like this. She's literally a walking plot device, being a vortex.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
And I'm far more involved emotionally and far more invested in her brother than I am her, and I think that might be a problem.
I agree. I also think that, of course, I feel like Morpheus kind of takes a back seat in this last stretch of episodes, which is kind of unfortunate. We don't necessarily get much more of the dynamics of like him and Gregory. Like Gregory is kind of just like off, like following Rose most of the time. You know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff starts to shift with these episodes, which is kind of unfortunate.
I believe Gideon, not Gregory's the gargoyle.
Did I say?
Yeah, you
Wait,
said Gregory.
no, it's Matthew. Matthew.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the. I thought you were talking about the guy, not the Raven.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got my M names mixed up.
All right. Regardless, yeah. So Matthew, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, you're right though. We do kind of write Dream out with Matthew in terms of like him falling. But speaking of which, we should talk about someone who gives Matthew some points. We should talk about Merv, the Mervin, the Pumpkinhead.
Oh my God, freaking Mark Hamill. Yeah.
Yeah, and how one I love that we kind of gave him like a stop motion look for the Pumpkinhead, which looks great. And obviously, there's some Nightmare Before Christmas kind of throwback, which is really nice. But yeah, Mark Hamill, great to playing a real character is kind of like this kind of this pumpkin janitor who's kind of repairing the dream realm. Very practical
I
looking
want to see
design.
more of him in season 2.
Me
I thought
too.
it was a great addition.
I thought he was an excellent addition. Yeah. Honestly, here's the thing. I love our supporting characters with the exception of Rose because I love Merv. I love Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry was great as who we learned to be Fiddler's Green, like kind of the place embodiment for Matt.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, Stephen Fry was just I love his introduction to Rose Walker, where he kind of helps save her, but she doesn't really need saving. He acknowledges it. Well, it doesn't seem he really needs it. The fact that we have him just playing an utter gentleman with like a sword in his cane, and he's awesome, and he's got a mustache. Cool, man. I love him. Delightful. Seriously, it's just delightful when we put him in the serial killer convention, which is just it's such a great place to put such a friendly guy. So yeah, let's see. So the idea of the vortex here, obviously, being like she has a power that could rival Dream's power, which is not a good thing. And I
think it's an interesting conundrum. I just think it's a shame that we spend so much time on it. And Dragon, I'm not gonna lie, this was absolutely an issue for me with the books as well. Is that once we get done with the John Dee stuff, which is so compelling. Like, yeah, there's a reason I never really finished Sandman. It's like I feel like it starts off almost too good for its own sake. It's like where I like even in the books, I think the Rose Walker stuff was not as good as the John Dee stuff, and that's kind of just like if you are going to be adapting this basically issue by issue, yeah, that is a problem you're gonna run into. You're kind of at the mercy of the source material.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Rose Walker thing breaks down a very specific point for me. It's very specific. I know exactly what bothers me about the Rose Walker stuff. It's the fact that I don't care about her friendship with the Borders, including Layla.
Yeah, the Borders felt like they were in another show.
And that's that to me is the most distracting. I'm so in for our story up to this point, and then
if I remember correctly, there was a lot more stuff with Ken and Barbie in particular in the comic. There was a lot of stuff with Barbie and what she had going on in her dreams. That whole fantasy epic type vibe. There's a lot more stuff in the book with that.
See, that's the thing. So it's less, honestly, it's less Rose. It's more so the fact, like, Rose finding her brother, that's a story I care about. But Rose, while finding her brother, she's hanging out with these wacky Borders. And then we're going to go into their dreams later. And then we have...
I have nothing against this, but did we really need, like, 3 different drag queen performances?
Did we have 3 of them?
Yes.
Well, I know there's the dream one, but I wouldn't really count that. Then you have
there's the dream one, there's the one where they go to see him initially, and then there's the one in the finale.
Forgot the one in the finale. That's
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's too many. No, you're sure. Yeah.
I'm just saying for something like that was something that wasn't even in the book specifically because I honestly feel like because I heard from Neil Gaiman like that having that was actually a Neil Gaiman call because he was like, well, we couldn't do song and dance numbers in comics because they wouldn't really translate. And honestly, Dragon, I feel like they were like, okay, let's have all the song and dance numbers now. You know what I mean? They kind of overcompensated a little bit.
No, they didn't. Of course, the one song they needed, "Dream a Little Dream," and we didn't do it. If you, at the very least,
had Hal singing that, right?
That's what I'm saying. At the very least, if you're gonna do a drag queen song and dance number, at the very least,
no, seriously, that's the pulse of the show. That's honestly probably like the biggest nitpick I could find with the show right there.
I agree. So just plot wise, the big thing we tee up, we got a vortex, which is bad. We have our three escaped our 3 escapees from the realm. We got the Corinthian, we got Galt, who's the shape changer, and we got Fiddler's Green. Of course, Fiddler's Green will turn out to be kind of a self-resolving problem, but we'll get there. Anyway, So yeah. Oh, they summoned the Corinthian to attend the convention, which says some serial killer aficionados, which is going to be awesome. We'll get there when we get there. Let's move on to episode 8.
All right, chapter 8. So yeah, the foster home stuff. This like I don't know. This episode is probably. I honestly, Dragon, I really do think that 7 and like to a lesser extent 10. I like 10 is decent, but I don't think it really reaches some of the high highs of the other. Like it kind of has like a. I feel like that's a kind of like a thing with Netflix shows traditionally. Is like the last episode is not usually the best one, but anyways. I do think 8 and 9, like, I mean, obviously 9 is like probably the highlight of the Rose Walker stuff, but this, it just like it sucks in such a realistic way. All the foster home stuff, Dragon, it hits so goddamn close to me. The whole like, no, we're not giving him up. He's worth $800 a pop or $800 a month. I don't want to get into personal details. Like my brother is technically living with my mother. It's not a foster home situation, but yeah, Dragon, you know a little bit about what's going on there, and it's just like I said, I don't really want to get personal with it, but suffice to say, there is I very much know what it's like to have a brother be in like a maybe abusive environment and not being able to do jack shit about it. It really sucks.
I mean, there's a true hopelessness with the fact where he finds that note and he says, "Hey, I thought you were pretty sneaky, didn't you? Trying to sneak
oh
this
yeah,
into a
oh
purse."
yeah, absolutely.
That was a cruel misdirect where you think, okay, she's about to reach for her in the purse, and then she was going to get killed. But no, the kid never had a chance.
Dragon, I gotta tell you, between the Black Phone, Where the Crawdads Sing, which I'll talk about in my memoirs this month, and then this summer has been a banner year for abusive fathers. It really has been.
Yay!
I know, right?
Oh, no, but seriously, this is where we get into the so again the very compelling Jed story here. So this poor kid is living in this horrible foster situation, thanks to again just on it's this is horrible situation thanks to what happened, that things what happened to his parents and everything, and now he's
You know
just
what
kind of
really gets to me about the whole thing is how complicit the aunt is, in spite of the fact that she knows it's a bad situation.
yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah, I tell you, I really what really elates me about this, though, I love the fact that we have a nightmare who's trying to redeem themselves and trying to become the Sandman, but Galt. So that's the idea. Galt is not a bad guy necessarily, like Dream assumed Galt was. Like, hey,
Right.
I'm trying to help this kid through his dreams. I'm going to give him like the best dreams ever. That are basically are him being the hero of his own fantasy, which again is kind of the power fantasy of like you're helpless in a situation, you want to help others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the fact that he's. I love that we kind of call back, and again, this is a minor. To be fair, they went as far as they possibly could. We did get some superhero references. Like you have some Batman, Superman figures in the background. They have like the Pied Piper's a Flash villain, so you have like some throwbacks to DC when he becomes the Sandman superhero, which is delightful and it's really great. And we're doing kind of the throwbacks to comic books and everything. So the idea that, of course, I'm sure you're familiar with this, there were comic book Sandman, and basically when they approached Neil Gaiman, like, hey, we want to do a revamp of the Sandman, we want it to be a different guy, though.
Right. And so basically, like, the kids' version of the Sandman is essentially the Golden Age Sandman, right?
Well, there's kind of like two Golden Age Sandman, but yeah, he's essentially one of those guys, yeah.
Okay.
Like, he's not the coolest one who had, like, a gas mask, which essentially Dream's mask, the helm that Dream wears is like a throwback to the original.
Gotcha.
From the 40s. That was the ideal. A guy with a gas gun.
That's all the way back from the 40s? Wow.
I'm pretty sure. Like,
that's a pretty progressive design for a 40s comic.
Yeah, Sandman was a member of the Justice League in the original run.
That's really interesting. All right, anyways.
Yeah. Oh, I guess technically I'm trying to remember. I think we just called them the Justice Society back there.
I'm just saying that's a very striking design for something in the 40s. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, so it absolutely was. So that's why Sam was still in people's minds when they think we want to do a new version of this guy because he wasn't much of a character, but he had a really cool look to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, point being,
kind of like Boba Fett.
Sure. I mean, it's why the Green Hornet stuck around for so long, Tiki. It's the fact that he had the gas gun, he had the cool gimmick and stuff. He was Batman without the scary bats.
Uh-huh.
So, I love. To me, I don't know if you had this reaction. I when Dream hears the kid introduce himself as the Sandman, I think he's delighted by this on some
He
level.
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got that.
Which I think was just so cute. Like, oh, the
Again,
Sandman.
like this guy has like he has like these little tiny moments of humanity that I think the actor just works in so well and so naturally.
Now we could be reading into this because he could just be laughing at like what Galt's up to here, but still, I don't know. I like
No,
to
I
think
don't think so. I genuinely think he was amused by the whole thing.
I like that we, the audience, feel bad for Galt, right? Because Galt was trying to
I don't.
do
I never really viewed her as a villain at all. Yeah,
exactly. So I love that we kind of like out of the three escapees, only one of them, the Corinthian, was bad. The other two, like they were trying to do good in his name, and they point that even a nightmare can dream, Lord, and that's a memorable last line before you're being, eviscerated. And the important thing we tee up here transitions into the whole Rose Walker story is that Dream is going to do things that are morally questionable, but importantly, Dream is not wrong at all, though. She broke the rules, and the danger she did wrought here, she's not really helping the kid, she's deluding the kid.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's the fact
yeah.
that Dream is never really wrong in what he's doing here, especially with the big thing that's going to happen in the next episode. So that's kind of an important note I like that we're hitting there. So brings us to the other standout of the season.
Okay, chapter 9, Collectors. Like I said, Dragon, this has a real The Boys energy to it for me.
It does for sure. So they obviously this was always like this is the big because it was such a dark concept, such a dark issue. I mean, that and the 24-hour diner, obviously these are like the issues that the Comics Co were always like, well, not the Comics Co, they were probably disbanded at this point. This is like all the parent groups and everything were always raging against the Sandman for like, look what they're doing, what is this?
I mean, to their credit, like with this in particular, yeah, I kind of see it. Yeah.
I mean, look at this way. For the time in '89, this was again, this is like this and Killing Joke. We were pushing it back then. We were,
right, yeah.
So the serial convention.
Although I think this holds up a lot better than Killing Joke. It does, frankly.
Well, I mean, do you mean this in general? Do you mean the adaptation of Killing Joke?
I mean, in general, honestly, I've never been a big fan of Killing Joke.
Well, I don't want to get bogged down a whole Killing Joke discussion here, but let's just, regardless. The serial convention.
I mean, mostly because of the fridging of it all, but that's a whole different conversation.
Anyway, so the serial convention. I love this Neil Gaiman idea. I love that we kind of turned it into a verb at this point, by the way. The Neil Gaiman kind of vibe to this.
I know, right?
I love just this delightful idea that we've masked this horrible thing with like a bunch of like we kind of censored it for any prying eyes. Like it's like a Funko cereal convention almost.
Exactly.
Like it's a cereal convention, yet we don't have boxes of cereal ad or anything. Just we call it a cereal convention.
That you know what? That's like maybe my one nitpick here is that I feel like as far as production design goes, it would be fun if they did do like kind of like a false front of the actual cereal convention. You know what I mean?
It probably. Do you recall if they did they had boxes of cereals in the convention in the comic?
I don't off the top of my head, no.
I'm pretty sure my logic would be that has to be the gag. Like they it wasn't, it was like so obvious, so like something was
off. Like just picture that, like all the boxes of cereal are just like murder themed.
Yep. That's seriously, Funko loves
the purpose of the front, but whatever.
Yeah, like Funko loves making like these cereals that coalesce with the Funko toys, and they love getting like old kind of 50s in brand and everything.
Right.
Colorful cereal designs. They would have a ball with designing all sorts of cereal brands for this convention. but yeah, so I love the fact that when Gideon shows up, there's like a cereal convention that children aren't allowed in. That's a missed opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's utterly delightful. So here's the big thing. So Boyd Holbrook, he kills in this episode. Well, in many senses of the word, but he really kills in this episode. Boyd Holbrook is utterly amazing in this episode. Yeah, we kind of like he manipulates the kid, but with a lot of kindness. That this poor kid's been shown such cruelty, he kind of like combats it with utter kindness.
Yeah, Boyd Holbrook is one of those actors where I will admit when he popped up in Logan, I didn't really like. I don't know. I need to rewatch Logan now because, like, I didn't really vibe with his performance all that much. I thought he was kind of like one of the weaker elements of that movie. But, like, honestly, like since then, he's really like kind of made a name for himself. So,
did you ever see the movie that he did for Netflix, the one with Michael C. Hall?
I don't think so. No,
I'm trying to remember if it's Killer. No, it's not Killers of the Flower Moon. It's something else. It's the
that's
I
the
have to.
new Scorsese movie coming out.
I know. It has like a title like that though. It has like kind of like a. There's something. I'll look into it when you can. It's him and Michael C. Hall. Like Michael C. Hall doesn't really do much these days. It'll probably be easy to find.
Right.
Regardless, yeah, that was he was the lead in that, and C. Hall played his brother, or at least his brother-in-law, I think, technically. Anyway, so, but yeah, the convention itself, I love that Boyd Holbrook. He plays this killer in such a ridiculously charming way, and he's like he has such great lines. I love the line that he has about when the kid's asking his name, and he says, you know, the whole point of like every time you hear your name, it's when you're in trouble. Get back here, Jed, and all that sort of stuff. And it's this lovely idea of like, yeah, it's like Neil Gaiman logic you can't beat. Like, yeah, you do get every time you hear your name, it's usually like in someone calling your attention for something you don't want to do or you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. So this is the idea that all these conventions are collectors, which of course serial killers they collect trophies and everything. So that's an ingenious way of hiding the serial killer thing, calling it a collector.
Yeah,
convention.
totally.
Or like how the other conventions that you have that are not comic book conventions are essentially collectors conventions. Or
On the other hand, though, I do think there are some moments where the hero characters are walking through the convention and the people are being very, very, very transparent about what they're talking about.
Well, remember though, when the kid walks in, though, he gets like all the coded dialogue, like, "Oh, we butchered me. That thing, the way that steak bled, man." Or like, "Oh man, this thing should have been."
Okay, that's what I'm saying. They're technically coding it, but it's pretty obvious, though.
Yeah, I like that. Again, once you get in there, if you stick around, you're not a murderer here. It is rather apparent. But I love these like we walk in the panels and stuff. We have like almost like a women who kill is like a women's empowerment seminar, and then
I love that.
like,
I love that.
the religious killers. And that's where he learns like, oh god, this isn't good. Oh boy, and there's the Corinthian.
Also, the guy with the glasses who kind of leads the convention dragon. He felt like he should have been Wallace Shawn.
Oh, wait, you mean so we have, you mean the three that recruit him, right? The three.
Yes.
Okay, so those three. So we have Funland, not just Fun. We have Funland, who's the creepiest. We have Nimrod, he's the one that you think should have been played by Wallace Shawn. We have the Good Doctor. No, not Freddie Highmore, the late.
Can you imagine if they just pulled Freddie Highmore randomly?
It would be fun if we just kind of have this Freddie Highmore with blades in roles where he plays people that could very easily be killers. Yeah, so but yes, I could see him as like Wally Shawn, but still, it's like I don't know, I can't bear the thought Wally Shawn is like a deranged killer. Have you ever seen him as a deranged killer or anything?
Yes.
Really? You have what? What would you see him in?
He's popped up in like crime shows and shit like that.
Interesting. I have not run across that my travels. I have not. But anyway, yeah. So how creepy is Funland though?
Oh god, yeah. Again, very kind of the boys' energy in some aspects.
The fact that he.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't.
No, you're good. You're good.
He wears like these kind of a demented non-copyrighted version of the Mickey Mouse ears. And the idea he trolls kids and he's like gloating to another guy. This is how I lure him in. You be all friendly to him, and you bring him in. And the fact he puts the moves on Jed, which is creepy, and he tries to kind of lure him away. It's like the fact this guy can't help himself. Like, no children here, are you sure? I'm sure. Believe me, I'd know. Shivers.
Oh yeah.
By the way, my favorite bit with Boyd Holbrook's acting in the whole show, I love the way he played this moment where you have a bunch of fanboys of the Corinthian saying, "Oh, you look so good for your age and everything," and tell me the name because they assume he's It's such a great idea that they think he's a copycat because the Corinthian is like hundreds of years old. That they go about him and they say like, "Hey, why the Corinthian? Like, is it like a biblical name or is it this or like, do you just like the leather?" He says, all of the above.
All the above.
This place, it's just like this serial killer taking in his legacy and the crazy he's inspired. He's like taking it with a grain of salt, like all of the above. Just he can't give him an answer that's going to satisfy him. He just gives him kind of the next best thing. It's delightful.
Sure,
it plays it really well. Anyway, so let's see. Oh yeah. So this is where we get the honestly the big payoff of the Rose stuff. Why we kind of wasted so much time with her roommates. So Dream confronts goes in, we go into the dreamland, and essentially we find Lyda, the one of the ladies that Rose has befriended, and she's been having this relationship, I believe, with her husband who has passed. And
Yeah.
essentially, what has happened is Rose broke down the barriers with existing, and in doing so, this lady is not, if I read it right, this lady's not conferring with like a dream or a memory of her husband. This is like the ghost of her husband, and that's not allowed. That's not supposed to happen. And because of this relationship going on, she's become pregnant, which is like a big break in the bylaws. So Dream One, he kind of nixes the husband, and also he, again, not out of like joy or he wants it to be cruel, but he just has by law, he has to take possession of her child when it's born because it's such
Mhm.
a messy situation. Oddly relevant these days, sadly enough.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So I mean it's just really that's the trippiest thing that's been pointed out to me, Tiki. The fact that so many things in the Sandman show have not really been touched, or at least adapted in so many other things, like the serial killer convention. Can you really think of the last time you saw a serial killer convention of like actual serial killers?
I mean, it's something I could see. Like I said, it's something I could see the boys
But
or
they
something.
haven't done it though. That's the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the fact that a lot of it is untouched, and it's kind of impressive. Like just the shows that
Sure,
go, like no
sure.
one's really wanted to like. I don't want to rival with Neil Gaiman. Did he did it so well? So Neil, anyway, so Dream and Rose, they're on the outs because of all this, and we see the Jed and Rose are now in the possession of the Corinthian, which is not good.
Right, which leads us to chapter 10.
Not a lot here. We basically put a fine point on things. I think the big moment for me from the book that we kind of have brought here is like Dream gives kind of this. We have kind of the philosophical debate between Dream and the Corinthian, which is nice.
Yeah, and again, much like you said, I like that there's no fighty fight stuff in the series. I like that they held back on that. We don't need it, and I feel like it very much makes the series as a whole play better. It makes it more unique. So I mean, honest to God, Dragon, as you probably know, that like the fighty fight stuff is like probably the big reason why I'm getting burnt out on superhero stuff just in general. Is that it's like I think the character stuff for the most part is still relatively good. Not necessarily in some cases, like Thor: Love and Thunder, for example. But I digress. But there's just so many times, like I feel like Miss Marvel is a good example of this, where Miss Marvel is like, it's like a solid 7 out of 10 show, but it could have been like an 8 or a 9 if it would have focused more on the family dynamics and the dynamics between her and the friends, and less on the fighty fight bullshit that we get. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm kind of like trailing off on a whole point about the comic book genre at large. Forgive me.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I love using. If I recall, I don't remember if you actually went up against the Corinthian during this in the comic. I want to say he did because I know the Corinthian had like a big moment with him. So I like to think this was like the payoff, and we just basically like kind of
I
built
think
the
if
story.
anything, it might have been later on in the in the comic, but maybe because as far as I know, they move a lot of stuff from the Corinthian, they move a lot of it to flow into the first season where it actually took place later on.
Because all I do know is I know he did chew. I remember him chewing out the serial killers the way he did here, which was great. Like the fact that he made them feel guilty for all their actions and essentially
Which
put
is
them in like.
great. That's such a good payoff, and it's just like it's almost kind of like a fate worse than death. You know what I mean? Just like you are going to live with the pain and the guilt of all your victims and all the families of the victims.
Yeah, which is essentially all like their waking nightmares and dreams.
Uh,
Essentially, is
uh,
like now going to be fed into them, and like some of them are committing suicide, some of them are turning themselves in. It's like it's great. But yeah, so I love again. I love in the dialogue there, like just the ownership of like he created the Corinthian. The Corinthian is like kind of because he disappeared right when he was about to kind of deal with the Corinthians. So much pain has happened, and there's like a guilt there, and the fact that you were my masterpiece.
mhm.
It's the idea that like all you are is fear, and it's just kind of like this. I don't know. It's just this. It's a really I don't know. It's just I just love like kind of like the moral arc that Dream has gone on at this point. He's taking responsibility. He's seeing like you can't exist in the mortal realm to do what you wish to these people. You're supposed to be kind of a kind of an envoy of something. You're not supposed to be kind of like an actual menace.
Yeah.
So we also have just in kind of like, again, in lieu of a fighty fight, he does stab him once, and that's about as far as it gets. What we do have is this kind of this angel devil conflict on Rose's shoulder. With the whole, like, the walls, like, you've broken down the walls, and it's a terrifying visual, by the way. The idea that all of these people are dreaming of the worst things ever, and you've removed the walls, so it's nothing but negative energy that's feeding. That means the Corinthian could kill Dream in theory, which is
And
not
this
good.
is something that we haven't really brought up before in this podcast, but just in general, I feel like the visual language of dreams in this series is so well realized. I mean, of course, a lot of it is going back to the comic, but a lot of it is just kind of like the vibe of the cinematography, and I like how at a lot of points we're not necessarily sure if we're in a dream. They do kind of play around with that a lot. So just major props there. I feel like you said, just kind of the way that the dreams sort of start collapsing in on themselves. It is a good kind of a final conflict of the season, I think.
Yeah, and our resolution to all this too is like, so when we have the whole the kind of the issue of the baby being born and everything, we have unity. So we didn't mention this at all. So at the very top of things, Dream being gone throws throwing the world into chaos, and one of those things that people have been kind of have fallen asleep and never woke up, including
Right.
Rose's great grandmother, or how many additional greats are there? I'm not sure. Point being great grandmother. Let's go with that. Unity. She saves the
I'm pretty
day.
sure it's just the great grandmother.
So she saves the day when the baby is due. She essentially takes the vortex out of her and puts it on herself, and she kind of dies to save to save the baby and save her granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of learn all this was Desire's doing. Pulled the strings and everything, and Dream is very upset about that.
Yeah, and like I said, I do like that we have that as a little bit of a tease of season 2 of like Desire is very much like seems to be like they want to bring Dream down a peg, and I have a feeling they're still going to be in the background, right? Like I think that the bigger conflict in season 2 is probably going to be what the Lucifer stuff, but
Yeah,
I think that I don't know, if anything else, I think maybe the series, like if we do go on like multiple seasons, and keep in mind like more or less around the Midsummer Night's Dream of it all is where I kind of fell off of the comic. So I don't really know where it's going. I really don't. But like I could see it where the family members are kind of like slowly integrated more and more into each season. You know what I mean? Until finally, like the last season, it's like a big kind of like family like war. Like civil war between the family members, if anything, with different sides. I don't know.
sure. I mean, think about this. So there are 75 issues of Sandman. Now this season's like 16 condensed down to 10. So let's assume we're in increments of 10.
Uh huh.
So that's at least, like, I don't know, like 5, maybe 6 seasons, depending if they add on extra episodes or whatnot. Let's just say like five
I
to
would
six.
say roughly 6 would be my guess if they were to do the whole thing.
Sure, sure. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to go with that. I mean, again, it's a question of, like, with the Lucifer stuff. I mean, probably mounting an army with, like, Azazel and everything. So yeah, for sure, we could
By
definitely
the
do
way, how
that.
cool was that design where it's just like the eyes and the teeth and the void? It's very
Uh,
Nightmare Before Christmas esque.
I really liked it. I thought
Uh
it was
huh.
great. Yeah. And yeah, so I love, like, think about this though, just in kind of imparting here. I love that, just in looking at Dream's arc and seeing kind of how human he kind of got by the end of things here in this season. Just seeing that each encounter he had with, like, the three, kind of the three escapees. I think he took something away from each encounter. Like, think about the Fiddler's Green. It was a guy who just wanted to experience. He just wanted the human experience. Essentially, Fiddler's Green is a heady concept. This is a man who's an environment. He's a whole world that essentially is put these, like, he's the land that was comprised into a man so he could walk around after the land broke down. Like, just wanted to see what things were about.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's great. Like you said, just his whole vibe, like you can kind of tell from the jump that there's something up with him, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah, and he was very jovial and everything, and he befriended Rose. So again, he was like, basically, he was the bridge, because he went to Dream and everything, telling him, like, Rose is in trouble and everything. And it's the fact that he is, again, he was kind of he kind of massaged things to getting he basically kind of massaged the transition of, like, we're going to go from you need to deal with Rose Walker, but you can't just destroy her. You can't kill her. She's my friend, and again, there's we don't have to do this. So again, he's kind of getting him to a point of humanity. He sees like the worst of humanity in the Corinthian, and kind of like what it can wrought, kind of like what brought him there in the first place is kind of the rich 1%ers and the people who think they can imprison and can take the lives of others. So I don't know. I think he takes like a big lesson away from each of these things. Obviously, he at the end he redeems. He kind of think about it. He destroys the Corinthian. He rebuilds. Builds Galt. Like the demon who wanted to be good. And I think the implication is that Galt became like a dream or something because she flew away like butterfly wings. So yeah. Of course, we have those wings and we have the wings of the devil. So trouble's coming for old Morpheus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's the end of the first season.
Okay. I think I've already pretty much said my piece. I don't really feel like I have anything else to add to any potential final thoughts. I think it's I really do hope this show's a success. That's what I'll end with, because I think it's got a lot of potential. Honestly, with season 2, I would like to see something I would like to see this show tackle. I don't necessarily know how many different directors they had on board, but I would like to see I think this show could potentially be great as like a showcase of different directors, like I feel like I would love for them to like embrace the anthology side of things even more going forward. Because obviously with season 2, we've got Midsummer Night's Dream. That's probably going to be a big centerpiece. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to what this show can do in the future. I think the casting is pretty great. Like I said, I really like this. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Who?
The Sturgis or?
You said it earlier. I didn't. I can't remember how to exactly say his name. Like it's something.
Okay, well, I really like him. I do. I actually don't think I've talked about his performance quite enough.
No, it's Tom Sturridge or Sturridge.
Sturridge, I think that's it. Sturridge, yeah. Right. I really, I feel like he just nails the performance, and
he was perfect casting. I mean, I think the only other person who could have possibly played that role is James McAvoy because of the audio thing. But no,
sure.
This guy captured. He felt like, again, when he spoke, it felt like you were reading those balloons.
But I also love the fact that, like, I agree with you as far as like the vocals, but also the visual look and the body language as well. And the little breadcrumbs of humanity that we get that kind of like culminate at the end of the season. So I'm very excited moving forward. I really hope this is a big success for Netflix.
It's almost like that remember that Dr. Manhattan line in Watchmen, like that bit about Dr. Manhattan, the Watchmen movie, like the whole, it's like a little like Ozymandias like studied all like the little facial twitches. It was like he was weeping. So it's kind of like that with Sandman. Like those little touches, they speak volumes in kind of like this character progressing and kind of like letting humanity in, and kind of like, again, the connection of somebody who's in the most personal ways you can be. He's in people's dreams, and he's managing people's dreams and nightmares and everything. So this guy kind of knows the secrets. He knows you better than you know yourself. So there's going to be a humanity that rubs off on a guy doing that.
Sure, exactly.
So it was very well captured. And the story overall is very well told. I mean, I hope to God, Netflix does a smart move and keeps it around. But I mean, right now,
it's pretty much all they've got now. So
I mean, there's a ticking clock on Stranger Things.
It would be dumb to not keep it around.
I mean, right now there's a ticking clock on Stranger Things, which they're delaying, which is going to hurt them in 2 ways. Yes,
it's exactly one season. That's the ticking clock.
Exactly one season. They're probably going to try and break it up for the life of them, just to keep
it. Yeah,
they're gonna do that, and it's just going to be a whole thing of like, right now they got it's 3 things: Stranger Things. It's Cobra Kai, which I'm getting the sense they're going to beat like a dead horse now, unfortunately, than ending it. And then you have Umbrella Academy, which if it goes on, it's only going to go on for 1 more season. That's if it continues to go on. And now they have Sandman, which could be their saving grace. But I don't know. We'll see.
Aren't they losing Breaking Bad? I heard something about that.
Oh, don't. What? Lose?
You don't know about that?
All I know is every time you go on the phone, it keeps disappearing. Yet I don't know.
I don't know about Better Call Saul, but I heard something about them losing Breaking Bad.
That would not make any sense. Like El Camino is a Netflix original. What sense would that make?
Well, to be fair, the Marvel stuff were Netflix originals too.
Right. Well, that was more complicated though. I was like, it's owners, it's Marvel. I don't know.
I'm just saying they had the little N at the left hand corner of the screen.
Yeah.
That little N dragon.
Well, I think the bigger example is HBO Max originals. They're now gone. So yeah,
Right.
no originals are safe.
All right. Anyways, so thanks to everyone who might have listened to this. Thanks to OAW Entertainment for recommending the Audible book. I do want to give the Audible thing a try for sure.
Yeah.
And Dragon, we got Saul. Oh my god, I'm so hyped. I need to tell you about this. Speaking of dreams, I need to actually Dragon, do you want to do my stupid little dream thing just as an epilogue to this?
No.
No? Okay, fine.
Just tell me off air. Don't take this with that.
That's fair. I genuinely, it's so interesting. I want to record it. But anyways, all right.
Anyway.
See you later, folks. Have a good one.
See ya.